Hey folks, welcome to the podcast Rich Man's Theory. I am your host, Dr. Susan, and this is episode 3, the Dictionary of Political Spellcraft. So, we have a lot of really cool episodes coming up. I organized it in such a way where I'm giving you the foundations, the basics, the scientific method. So, if you heard the previous episode, I believe I went over kind of how discourse analysis works and how words create mental models in your mind, and how words actually influence the way we think and the way we believe this reality to be. So we can actually create perceptions of realities based on the words we used, but that also means other people can hack our minds through the language and the discourse that they use, and they can create mental models in our minds as well. And this will affect the way we think, the way we believe, and the way we act. So I always like to think of the mental models as a house of cards. So each card represents an idea that you've learned. And then as we learn, we start to learn more and more abstract things. So it's like more removed from our concrete or empirical experiences. And then we start connecting them based on how we receive the information. So if we receive the information in a certain organized way, then we are going to imitate or mimic that structure in our minds. And so however it's represented to us, we're going to represent it in our mind in the same way. So in that house of cards, you can see a whole bunch of different ideas and concepts that are connected to each other, and as a whole, taken as a whole, that is the way our ideologies, our ontologies, and our epistemologies are going to be formed. Now, your mind can be changed, but it's very difficult once that foundation for the house of cards is built, and that's why, post 25, it's really difficult to change people's minds. And when people do change their minds post 25, it's due to their own experiences and their own critical thinking and their own drive to just kind of listen to their own intuition and their gut feelings and say, you know what, something is not right. Something in the way that my mental models have been constructed is showing me that there is a disconnect between what I'm seeing empirically and what I'm feeling and what my intuition and my instincts are telling me versus what I'm receiving in the mainstream media or in public education or in public discourse. So I just wanted to just kind of review that. So it's kind of like a house of cards. And then whenever you learn something, you actually just add to the house of cards. So you make connections. And so you were going to add to the house of cards until, of course, the house gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that just kind of creates your perception or your beliefs in life. And when we have things like cognitive dissonance or doublethink, right? We know doublethink from George Orwell's 1984. That basically means that the new information that somebody is exposed to might not actually be integrated into the house of cards, right? So they would have like this mental model based on a whole bunch of information. Then they get new information that contradicts the house of cards. So what they do is they don't actually merge it with the house of cards. Like they don't actually stick that piece of information in the network. What they'll do is they'll just have like an extension of, oh yeah, and here's what other people are saying. And so then it's a connection not based on what they believe, but on hey, here's some extra information. So that association is like when they process it, they don't process it as something that they should believe or something that's integral to their knowledge or their success or survival. They connect it as, oh, and by the way, this is something that people say. And so they kind of just have like a separate section. You can think of it like as a guest house to the house of cards, right? So there's like a connection, but the connection is not to the foundation of the house of cards. It's kind of just like, like an extension of the wall or, the backyard or a pathway, right, to the guest house. And then the guest house will maybe like, okay, I know that there's some asymmetries or some irregularities or some logical gaps or logic gaps that just don't make sense with my house of cards, but I already built my house, so I'm just going to put those things in the guest house, and I'm going to acknowledge them whenever I need to acknowledge them, but I'm going to say, however, everything kind of supports my house, and so I'm not going to deviate from my house. And for that reason, people just don't want to recreate or rebuild their house, right? They already have a house, and then they're just happy to have like any anomaly or any gap in logic, they can just put in the guest house and say, you know what, I can entertain it, I can understand it at a superficial level, but it's not going to be integrated into my foundation. So I can talk about that a little bit later because that is not the topic for today. Today we are talking about the Dictionary of Political Spellcraft. And the Dictionary of Political Spellcraft is basically certain terms that we've come across in our contemporary life, so not just in history but in our actual lived experience. And I call it political spellcraft because the people who write political speech or who instigate certain public discourses are very aware of this whole mental model idea where they can actually create networks in your mind so that you're associating certain things with particular ideas. Okay, so that's how they can create things like racism, or they can get you to believe certain ideologies or certain beliefs in religions or cults or any kind of camp that you want to think about, like left, right, whatever spectrum that you might be on. And so they're able to use certain words to create certain networks in your mind, which then in turn create your perception on reality and of course affects the way you function. So here we go. I'm going to start off with a quote by Malcolm X. If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. And that also reminds me of another quote. I'm not sure exactly, it might be Mark Twain, but I'm not 100%, but he says, those who read the newspaper are those who do not read the newspaper are uninformed, and those who do read the newspaper are misinformed. So here we have lots of influential and smart people saying that there is public discourse that is deceptive. So we should always approach all information with our critical eye and with our intuition, because intuition is like an animal instinct. It's something that we know without having to learn. So let's not suppress that. All right, so I know that Sigmund Freud, because a lot of stuff that I do is about educational psychology and how words affect our psychology. Sigmund Freud was talking about magic, and he says that although magic and symbols and superstition are generally considered primitive forms of thinking, psychoanalysis is actually all about this kind of spellcraft and this kind of superstition about how words affect reality and your perception and your behavior. So according to Freud, he said that magic is the technique of animism. It's what brings life. What creates reality. And it reveals the clearest and most unmistakable way an intention to impose the laws governing mental life upon real things. And so you can go ahead and look that up. So there we go. We have like scientific bases for this whole idea of using words to manipulate, and you can think of it as spellcraft. Now, spellcraft can be something positive like white magic, can be something negative like black magic, but in just general, when I say spellcraft, I just mean using words to manipulate and bring about a certain desire. I have something written down about Cool Hand Luke. We have a failure to communicate. Okay, so that's, I guess I was trying to talk about how, we kind of have this division of right wing and left wing, and if you have one point that's similar to the left wing, then people will dismiss you, and whatever. If you have one point that agrees with the right wing and you're left wing, then they're just going to dismiss you. And this is so silly because the right wing and the left wing, they are both perched onto the eagle, the modern day phoenix. And so they actually all belong to the same bird or to the same party, okay? So let's not get tangled up in this bifurcation. There is truth and fiction in every package. It doesn't matter. We're going to take the truth wherever it comes, and we're going to throw out the fiction. We don't need it. And there is truth and fiction in both sides, left and right. That is why I am a libertarian, and I don't fit in onto the mainstream polarization. Okay, so let's keep going. So I thought it would be really important for us to think about why these people who came from England in the 1600s, why were they called pilgrims and not immigrants? Well, so I did a quick look up on the online dictionary, right? And then it tells you what pilgrim means, and I got three definitions. One is pilgrim means a religious devotee who journeys to a shrine or a sacred place. Okay. The next definition is a person who travels, especially to foreign lands, to a place of great personal importance. Okay, and then the last one is one of the English separatists who founded the colony of Plymouth in New England in 1620. Okay, what the hell? So it seems so odd that the first two definitions are super broad, encompassing all times, all cultures, all space, and have some kind of real ritualistic or spiritual significance. And then the third definition about the Pilgrims in Plymouth is hyper-specific, and it refers to an absolutely specific time and a specific place, which is Plymouth 1620, and the people coming from England. So you can see here that why is this word usually talking about some kind of spiritual pilgrimage or journey, and then, but it also could mean one of the English separatists who founded the colony of Plymouth in New England in 1620. So what you really have to understand is that because the term pilgrim was used way before 1620 and way before the people from England hopped onto the Mayflower and shipped themselves to the east coast of America, that the word pilgrim was used before they arrived. It's not like retrogradely they were called pilgrims for whatever random reason. No, they were called pilgrims before they hopped on to the Mayflower, and that is because they were religious devotees who were going to a shrine or a sacred place. That is why they're called pilgrims. So, when you hear this word New World Order, so the New World is the Americas, the New World. And the New World has an order, New World Order. A lot of people think that it's actually the phrase is world order, and now people are trying to create the new world order as opposed to an older system or an older order, and that's not what it is. It's the New World, which is the Americas, and the order of the New World. Okay, so the New World's order, you can think of it that way. The New World's what? The New World's order, the New World Order. And America was designated as the New World, and the place where that they would create an order there, an order based on the New World. And so in one of my other episodes, I'm going to actually break down the shrine of America and how it is the New Rome. Okay, so it is a religious or a holy place for the people coming from England and Europe, because it is the New Rome. Now, another little telltale for you is that in 1776, that is when the Freemasons were founded in America. So you can see that the Freemasons, that was their goal, was to create a new Rome. Okay, so the Freemasons created Old Rome, and they're like ancient Rome, and they're also creating the New Rome, which they did in the New World, which is the Americas. Anyway, this is not a conspiracy theory, by the way. All of the founding fathers were Freemasons, and that's fine, okay? And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing that this happened. It's just really your opinion and your interpretation of what Freemasonry is. But a really quick example of how the New World is the shrine, or the New Rome, is the Statue of Liberty, which is the new Colossus, right? So on the Statue of Liberty, it has the poem that says, the new Colossus, right? It titles the Statue of Liberty not as the Statue of Liberty, it was called the new Colossus, and that is a reference to the Colossus of Rhodes, which is an ancient statue of the Greek god Helios, the sun god Helios. And in season 2 of this podcast, I will present to you in more detail about the New World's order and the Statue of Liberty, among other eye-opening facts which are hiding in plain sight. So there you go. So we had the Colossus of Rhodes, which was a shrine for the ancient world and for Rome, because I don't know if you know this, but the Greek Empire, like the Greek Empire, the Hellenic Empire, and the Roman Empire, they were always competing over where Rome was, and Rome actually moved from one place to another. It never stood in one place. It actually moves around. So people always think Rome is modern Rome in Italy, and that's also not true. So Rome actually moved around because it's something symbolic. All right, let's keep going. Humanitarian intervention. This is also a example of political spellcraft. So humanitarian intervention is something that we here in, like the United Nations, which of course is created by the Rockefeller family, and therefore very much in the same category as the New World Order. Okay, so humanitarian intervention is a double speak, because it's basically saying we are going to help people by killing them. Okay, so a lot of people, or a lot of governments, can actually get away with mass murder by calling it a humanitarian intervention. So people actually vote for it because they think, oh, they're going to go help people, humanitarian, but really it's just another way to say not just war, but it's like an invasion. It's more of an invasion than a war, because it's really no battle. It's usually going into a broken system that's already fragile, very weak, and very vulnerable, and kind of invading it, and then like imposing your own rules and your army bases, and then your own economic structures that you're going to benefit from, not just militarily and politically, but also economically and financially. Okay. Another one that is really interesting to me is that people go around thinking that the opposite of capitalism is communism. So the opposite of capitalism is socialism, and the opposite of communism is democracy. So I have lots of episodes that are going to cover that. I don't want to go into it right now. Number 6 on my list is sustainable development. So we hear this word or this phrase all the time. What does it mean? Well, if you actually unpack it, you'll see that it is a campaign. Okay, it's not just a term. It's not a neutral phrase. It's actually a political campaign which seeks to literally pack the masses, the great unwashed, onto unfertile ground, right? So in deserts or concrete cities, creating sardine-cramped megacities, all in the name of sustainability, while of course the wealthy or the upper crust or the upper echelon are living on the fertile soil of large farm grounds or grasslands, and they have large land just for themselves, and they don't have neighbors living on top of them or next to them, or in those, I call them like egg carton kind of communities where everyone is living in an apartment building, and nobody drives except for all the people who are living in the countryside, who will say, oh, well, we need a car because we're so far away from the city. Okay. Another question that arose was, when I was reading about this whole sustainability thing, is what is sustainability and why is it worth sacrificing our lives for? And I found that the Republican National Committee had passed a resolution on the subject, which was the United Nations Agenda 21 plan of radical so-called sustainable development views the American way of life, of private property ownership, single-family homes, private car ownership, and individual travel choices, all as destructive to the environment. So, sustainable development is addressed in the current UN level Sustainable Development Goals. And if you know anything about the UN, you know it is a global elitist organization with a political agenda on a global scale. And if you don't believe that the UN has an agenda, you would be right, because they don't just have one, they have multiple agendas. And guess what they are called? They are called agendas. So let's take a look at the latest UN agenda, which is Agenda 23. So I'm not actually going to go into that. I just would like for you to know that sustainable development is based on only one side's or one person's or one group's specific view of how the economy works. And then based on that ontology, or based on that point of view, they will tell you what is best for society as a result of how they conceive of the economy. Okay, so they'll say, well, the economy works like ABC. Now, you might think that the economy works XYZ. Well, it doesn't matter. Okay, because they're going to tell you that, no, in our opinion, it's ABC, and therefore, based on our opinion, we're going to give you our opinion on what the solution is. And then, so what you can see that it is based on, the whole idea of sustainable development is based on a certain ontology, that government control of all the land is better than private ownership or individual ownership or freedom values or individual goals. No, like the communal goal as dictated by fiat by some supreme invisible centralized government is the best for everybody. Okay, so let's go to the next one, which is really interesting. Judeo-Christian. Here is another example of doublespeak which has fooled us. For some reason, we are told that Judaism is the religion of the prophet Abraham, but that actually is not true. The religion of Abraham predates Judaism, and it's easy to understand this when you recognize that Judaism branched from the tribe of Judah, and Judah was the great-grandson of Abraham. So you can see that it comes after Abraham, and that Abraham's religion predates Judaism. So this tribe of Judah, which comes from the great-grandson of Abraham, to establish their religion, they rejected Jesus as the Messiah. So that's how they kind of branched away and formed their own religion. So this means that there was a religion of Abraham, and then that Abraham's religion was not Jewish. And it is true that Judaism and Christianity, both as religions, revere the prophet Abraham. But so does Islam, right? So there is no Judeo-Christian belief system. There is an Abrahamic belief system, which is the religion of Abraham. And then there are religions which stem from the religion of Abraham. And then so there would be 3 religions that stem from that other religion. So Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. But to say that there is something specific that separates Judaism and Christianity from Islam is absolutely wrong. And to be honest, there's a link between Christianity and Islam, because in Islam they also believe in Jesus, whereas in Judaism they reject Jesus, right? So you can see here that the term Judeo-Christian is not really to show that these 2 religions stem from Abraham's religion. It's actually just to exclude Islam, and this is just the way to divide the world into camps, again, pretending that it's East versus West, even though Christianity and Islam and Judaism are all Eastern or Near Eastern or Eurasian, whatever you want to call it, because even those terms are problematic, every single one of them. But they're just trying to divide it into East and West, which is why they always lump some Islam with Eastern religions like Buddhism and Hinduism and that sort of thing, even though Islam is an Abrahamic religion and came from the exact same region as Christianity and Judaism. So you can see already it's just a way to artificially and politically divide the world into camps, us versus them, which is all they ever do in political doublespeak. I had a few other things, but I don't think I'm going to go into them now because I feel like I just kind of yammered on and on and on. I guess the last one that I will mention is, no, I don't want to mention it actually, and I'll just leave it for another episode. But I think in one of my other episodes I left with the lyrics by Bruce Springsteen for his song called Magic, which is a metaphor for the way the political system works. And I'm just going to go over it right now as well. I got a shiny saw blade. All I need's a volunteer. I'll cut you in half while you're smiling ear to ear. So in this first part of the song, you could see that the magician's magic trick or the politician's spellcraft actually gets you to agree to the terms of destroying yourself. I'll cut you in half while you're smiling ear to ear. You think that everything is hunky-dory, that they're in your best interest, and no one's playing a trick on you. And the freedom that you sought drifted like a ghost among the trees. This is what will be. Trust none of what you hear and less of what you see. This is what will be. So it's a song about political illusion and spellcraft. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Bruce Springsteen because he is totally politicized these days to the left. But I really believe that there's truth and fiction in everything, and that Bruce Springsteen has so much that we can learn from, especially if you go to his older albums from the 70s and the 80s. It's just really amazing literary genius, in my opinion, and he really does understand a lot of the plights of the struggling people, and he's able to bring that forth in his music in the most beautiful and artistic ways. So even if you disagree with his politics, I think there's a lot of really good information and sentiment and perspectives that maybe we wouldn't understand if it weren't for him putting it down in poetry and in music. So again, I would like to thank you so much for joining me on the podcast here. I do hope to get a podcast twice weekly, so please do join me. Please do let your friends know. I don't have very many downloads or views, but I promise that I will continue to do my best and try to stop yammering so much and just try to bring you a lot of information that perhaps hasn't been synthesized in the way like this for you before. So I'm really happy and honored to have you with me, and I will see you next time. Ta-ta!